Hi, everybody. My name is David Noor. I want to welcome you to our live stream on behalf of Service Council. Joining me is Michael Israel, Service Council COO. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Noor. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's good to see you. And our guest of honor, Greg Ratcliff, is the Chief Innovations Officer at Vertiv. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, David. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Greg. How are you?
I'm great.
It's great to have you. And Greg, great to continue the conversation from our live stream, our podcast, inService podcast this morning. For our audience, I would encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, servicecouncil.com/podcast. And we're going to build on this morning's conversation with Greg. I also encourage you to jump in with your questions, with your comments. Greg's got one of those fabulous positions that I certainly want to learn more about. And I hope you'll jump in this conversation with us. Michael and Service Council have also recently concluded a Voice of a Field Service Engineer survey. And he's got some great nuggets that we want to tap into as well. But Greg, what if you could, for our audience, if you could just jump in and briefly talk about kind of your journey, where you've been, what you've done, and how did you get into this Chief Innovation Officer role?
Yeah, thanks, David. It has been an interesting journey, and I was just commenting to a colleague today, we sure live in interesting times. I'll tell you, I began at OSU and had a couple startups and exits along the way. My journey began with a professor and the dean of engineering deciding to go out and hang his own shingle out, and so we started a small business in Central Ohio. And we did this thing called microprocessor development. When you couldn't say those words, they just would crash coming out of your mouth. So long history of working on operating systems, protocols, machine learning and big data, IoT along the way. At Vertiv, machine learning, IoT is directly connected to our services organization. And it's, a product gets sold once, but in our world, it gets maintained for many, many years, hundreds and hundreds of transactions. And so we built our organization around having the IoT practice over in the services arm of the business.
It's a great background. And what I was fascinated by is you're also an avid flyer, like a pilot?
Yes. Thanks, David. Yeah. I think that was in the headline for this, wasn't it? Clear Invisibility Unlimited. So that is an aviation term for those blue sky days when the pilots of the small airplanes are just yearning to get in the sky and spend some time. And for Vertiv, our journey in the innovation group is to connect our business and our engineers to customers, get the rest of our associates connected, to get our vendors connected, and universities and academia, to bring all of those four groups together.
Love it. Love that. And that's definitely, hence the title of the podcast. It was absolutely one of the comments you made in our conversation that resonated with me. I want to welcome, let's see, Mira is here from Georgia. Hello, Mira. And she started something great for our audience. If you're with us, we'd love to have you jump in and tell us where you're from. And Mark Wells also says, hi, Greg. And it's great to have others joining us. And I would encourage you to jump in with your questions. So, Michael, I'm going to start with you. Sure. Obviously, most of this audience may be familiar with Service Council. If not, talk a little about Service Council and give us a brief overview of the survey.
Sure. Service Council was founded back in 2010, 2011. I was one of the original members along with the founder, John Carroll. And the whole intent of the Service Council is to allow service executives to collaborate with each other, to study the research that we do, to gather insights into how other organizations that also have service operations are taking steps to improve their service delivery. And that type of thing. So it's kind of a organization of people of like mind and people that have similar jobs and similar experiences, where we have an opportunity to learn from each other. That's the kind of underlying theme for the Service Council. So at the Service Council, we do a fair amount of research. Each year we do two specific surveys. We do a survey called the Voice of the Field Service Engineer, and we also do a survey called the Service Leaders Agenda. And we've just finished writing a report on the Voice of the Field Service Engineer that will be published sometime within the next 1 to 2 weeks. And we are in the process of analyzing results from the survey called the Service Leaders Agenda Survey. So in the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey, and we'll go into this in more depth as we continue through this discussion, I'll just give you a fast overview. We had just shy of 725 field service technicians reply to the survey. So we have an enormous trove of data from a wide variety of technicians. Those 725 technicians work at 31, last count, could be more right now, last count, 31 different companies, and they represent the entire world. So 52% of the respondents came from the United States, but 47% of the respondents came from EMEA, APAC, and Canada. So we've got a tremendous representation, not only from a large number of technicians at a large number of companies, but also great representation internationally. So that's kind of a high-level overview right now.
Sounds great, and look forward to learning more about that. Greg, share with our audience a little about Vertiv. If they don't know anything about the company, how would you describe Vertiv? What is Vertiv about?
Yeah, thanks, David. I'll tell you, Vertiv is one of those quiet companies out in the world, and hopefully this will help get our name out. So the internet is really important these days. So is telecom, connectivity, and having computer systems and highly reliable systems stay operating is our business. So if you've ever seen movies or been in a data center or cell site or telecom office, there's lots of equipment in there, and there's radios, there's routers and networking, there's storage. We don't do that. What we do is everything else in those facilities. So the power distribution, the power, keeping the electricity up, routing the electricity to the right location. And if you think about it, there's a lot of electricity that flows into these facilities, which generates heat. And after you put all that power in there, you have to get the heat out. And so that heat needs to get it moved away, exhausted somehow. Our world is improving the efficiency of those systems, making them more reliable, getting those systems so that they can be serviced and keeping them running all the time.
Perfect. And I think you're a testament of that infrastructure that so many of us may not think about, but it absolutely runs our not only everyday lives, but our companies. And I've seen some of these data centers, and they're just engineering marvels. Michael, a very quick question. We've got Anmira. Thank you for jumping in. Can you talk about companies and industries that you kind of worked with and who participated very quickly in that field engineering survey?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a highlight of the industries and then highlight a couple of companies as well. So the top industries that participated included, not necessarily in this order, automotive, healthcare industries, industrial equipment, industrial products, construction companies, companies that are involved in any type of IT, so computers, et cetera. And then that was followed by agriculture, oil and gas, consumer goods. Just a wide variety of industries were represented, but the top industries, as I mentioned, were automotive, healthcare, industrial products, construction, IT-related companies, et cetera. So, industries. So any of the companies in those industries were the dominant respondents. So some examples would include Medtronic, Cummins, Schneider Electric, and others like that.
So I want to encourage our audience. If you have additional questions, would love to have you jump in. Greg, talk about your role as Chief Innovation Officer. What priorities, mandates, and I also really appreciated your comment about the personality of the business. Sounds like your chair has really set the tone for, and I love this, winning now and winning later. So talk about your role. Talk about what innovation means at Vertiv.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll tell you, the business, I kind of think of us as coming out of the desert. We've been through some tough times, but the investment that we've made in ourselves is coming to fruition. And yeah, Dave Cody's Winning Now and Winning Later is our guidebook. For a long time, we've had efforts, and many companies do this today, is you're just working on the here and now. New product development process, and you're running from beginning to end on a project or a new product or a development. And we really felt it was important to look a little bit further downstream, particularly as technology changes. New semiconductors, new techniques, new processes, new ways of building things. And we don't want to be surprised when they finally get ready for industry and they're ready. And so my role is to kind of drag in relevant technology for the business for a little bit longer window, in the 3 to 5 year range. So at least other companies are organized this way also. Our office of the CTO is not capital C, capital T, capital O, but we're advocates, and we're bringing in new technology to the business just to help them. And so that the engineers, the service staff, so that the rest of the company, they can be ready to use a new technology because they've already been exposed to it. And like I said, I get that from all over the place.
How do you push back against this constant need to cut investments in real innovation? Because that's not going to impact Vertiv's, quarterly results this quarter, right? As you said, we're looking 3 years out, and my perception is very easy to cut your budget so I can meet my quarterly P&L. How do you push back against that?
Yeah, you're right. I think some good examples we've had, particularly in the services part of our business. You have a customer aligned, a willing customer that's ready to do an experiment, and we have small self-contained pilots. So I don't like that thing that people say fail fast. I think we're trying to succeed fast. So little tiny projects, well scoped, have success that's really possible. The entire thing's a risk. And so having a project that you're pretty sure that we can get to the very next step. Let's get to first base right now. And engaging a customer, that keeps everybody in the company excited, of course.
Michael, are you seeing a lot of roles like Greg's in the field service, customer support, customer experience space? It seems to be an anomaly to have a chief innovation officer that comes from Greg's background and is really focused on innovating kind of the way the organization services its customer base. You may be muted, Michael, as well.
Yes, thank you, David. I can't say that we see chief innovation officers per se, but we do see a lot of chief service officers. So I think that would be very, very closely related to the role that Greg is playing at Vertiv. So, and the chief service officers often are very involved in selecting new technologies and trying to come up with new ideas that will enable them to provide service to their customers more efficiently and more cost effectively.
Got it. Can you give us some examples of innovations you've seen or you've heard of in service, experience, customer support space that kind of really stands out to you in an interesting way?
Yeah, I think so. And I think Greg will recognize this too. There seems to be, well, not seems to be, there actually is some budding technologies on the horizon that are starting to be implemented. And that's all around virtual reality and augmented reality, merged reality specifically for field service and for delivering remote service to customers. So I think that technology in and of itself is going to be a real game changer, much like IoT has been over the past couple of decades.
So Greg, build on that. I appreciate your comment on you're excited about 5G and Edge. Talk about real innovation in service. And before you do that, real quick, just Mark has a quick question. So want to ensure that your company doesn't manage the hardware, but really the power distribution. Is that accurate?
That's a good question, Mark. Yeah, within data centers and telecom, the infrastructure is largely managed independently of the operations. You can see this most relevant in banks. The money network is really kept far apart from the infrastructure network, which is kept far apart from the employee network. And it's the same sort of division of duties and that Vertiv provides. So infrastructure means the power systems, the UPSs, the keyboard, video, mouse, the KVM systems that allow the remote operations of those systems, not operating systems, not servers, not networking directly. Others manage that pretty well for our customers.
So technology, what are you most excited about? What were you seeing? Are you guys doing any kind of AR, VR, augmented reality within kind of supporting field service?
Yes. Yeah, I'll tell you Michael's comment about innovation officers being a little rare. I think this is a beautiful thing that Vertiv has organized around is you get exposed to a lot of different technologies and roles within the business. Our CTO, one of the things that he likes to do is move people around. Your first day as an engineer, you're going to go spend some time in the factories. Then you're going to go spend some time in the services organization. And he's had that in place for many years in the business. Myself, I have, and you guys that are in services understand this, once services and directly serving customers gets into your DNA and your blood, it's hard to get it out. And so I can see the technology affecting our customers directly right now. One of those areas is, particularly right now with the internet and the COVID situation, is you need low latency. We had just a little bit of latency issue just now on the call, is you need low latency for audio and video, and you need robust systems at the edge for that last few miles of connectivity. And as we do more and more video and higher resolution video and more people on the phone calls like this, you're going to need edge capabilities. And that's not always with hard lines and cables and networking, but with 5G. We're actually using 5G on this call right now. I can see the cell site, so I'm pretty close to it. And man, is it rocking fast.
Do you make house calls? Because my kids keep complaining that our devices are not fast enough. And I'm trying to find out, does Vertiv have an in-home service plan?
Well, one small piece of advice: within your house, wire stuff up so the Wi-Fi isn't saturated.
Perfect. Yeah. Michael, let's talk about service for a second. I've always believed the relationship really starts from a brand with its customers after the sale, right? So you've been promising me this fabulous medical device or this fabulous technology infrastructure. I buy, and you come and install it. Service to me delivers that brand value, that brand promise that the company brings. Yet in every service organization that can ever remember, it is constantly perceived to be overhead. It is constantly perceived to be a cost center. My question of you, and I'm going to go to Greg next, what has to happen for leaders to begin to see service, experience, support as really an enabler of their business, not an inhibitor of it, and really begin to much more proactively invest in that area?
Well, let me just disagree with you somewhat, Noah.
Please.
I think that attitude about service being an overhead and service being sort of a necessary evil is an attitude of the past.
Great.
I think that more and more executives over the last decade, or maybe even a little bit longer, have woken up to the fact that service is the frontline representative of your company. And even more important than that, and I've done a lot of research on this in the past, in my previous days as being an analyst as well, service oftentimes contributes as much as 50% of total corporate revenue. And some companies, in fact, that's all they do is deliver service, like third-party service companies. It's 100% of corporate revenue. But for many manufacturers, it's 40 to 50% of total revenue, and it represents a disproportionate profit when compared to product sales. So I think service executives are beginning to have realized and are continuing to realize, and this attitude is expanding, that service is not a necessary evil. It's absolutely a significant contributor to your bottom line and to your customer growth and your customer satisfaction.
Beautiful. Thank you for that clarification. Love it. Greg, talk to me about service at Vertiv. After I buy your power infrastructure and all those resources, where's service on the leadership team's kind of priority or the organization's priority?
Yeah, I started with that. So these infrastructure things that we talked about previously, they have a pretty long life in facilities like cell sites. Think hospitals and their 911 or their systems behind the scenes. Think government and 911 centers. So I will tell you is while you could sell a thing, no matter what it is, you're going to need to keep it running for a while in almost all cases. You know, Michael was talking a little bit. He was disagreeing with you a little bit, David, and I think so. I will too. And again, because it is in my bloodstream. So we just purchased a new TV, and a lot of organizations think of televisions as the service part of it as a pain point, right? And don't think of service as repair. Service is serving the customers and their needs after that selling transaction. So hundreds and hundreds of transactions are going to occur now between my TV vendor and me. I noticed they had some private channels, some free video that once it was connected. I get software updates. I get enhancements. They haven't tried to sell me anything new yet, but I suspect that's coming also. So not just a cost, but continued revenue after the sale. In Vertiv's case, these systems are critical to their operations, And so understanding its state of health, advising our customers, hey, you're using this well within specs, but if you would do this, you could use it better. You could operate it more narrowly in its perfect sweet spot of operation, and it will last as long as possible. You make a big investment in time and capital for this stuff, and IoT allows us to say, hey, you know what? If you just could reduce the temperature on those batteries a little bit, they'll last a little longer. If you could improve the air quality in this facility or the water quality, your heat exchanger will last as designed. Well within specs, but as you know, you're easy on your car, it's going to last longer.
Michael, you have some interesting lenses on really the impact of service on customers as well.
Yeah, let me just give a personal example, and it may be somewhat of a silly example, but I think it illustrates the point perfectly well. Not too long ago, we had both of our bathrooms redone. So we hired a construction company to do that. The sales guy was great, very, very professional, gave us a nice discount, et cetera, et cetera. After all the work was done, we had a problem 2 times with one of the shower doors. The technicians that came to do that repair, they had to tear the wall apart, et cetera, and then put it all back together. They did an outstanding job. Here's the point. I've recommended that company to 4 other people that have asked me how I got my bathrooms done. I didn't do that because of the salesperson. I did it because of the service I got from the company. And even though this is a home-based service, the idea and the thought applies to all organizations that provide service of any kind.
Absolutely, and it's a great testament to that service really sells the brand and really sells our satisfaction.
Absolutely.
Satisfaction with the brand. Greg, we've got a question from John Carroll. Theodore Levitt said, creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. How does Vertiv roll out a new innovative business methodology? Who are the key stakeholders that are involved in you doing that?
A business methodology. Let me think about that for a second. Well, one of the things that we do as part of the Vertiv user experience is there's a broad set of stakeholders. We call that View. Within View, there's a broad set of stakeholders that are engaged from inception. In times past, I've seen companies where the project begins when the project manager is engaged, the gate 1 meeting. a lot of decisions were made well before that. What it will be, what the budget is. Some organizations start selling it before gate one. And we've instituted this process. I just named it gate zero, but it's to have a tryout, to have a pilot, particularly for methodologies. But I will say our View team is completely focused on bringing everybody to the table that matters. And it's a pleasure to watch them. Those first few meetings, I will say, they're often difficult, let's say, challenging. It's like, hey, what about this? What about that? Considerations that might have been overlooked. Having a great start, I think, is important in gate one, and having stakeholders early is really, really matters.
That's fantastic. Love that. Love that notion of let's kind of go, I call it T-1, right? And really think through how will we think and lead differently, and all the different stakeholders that will impact. Michael, I want to talk about a pandemic for a second. We're a year into this. We've all had to, after the initial shock, we've all figured out how to work remote, how to work from home, how to, particularly challenging for field service technicians, not to be able to go to the clients, companies, and how do we support them remotely? Talk about some trends, one or two that you believe will have a lasting impact in the service experience, customer support space in the post-pandemic world.
Yeah, well, certainly a lot of people are going to continue to work from home. So oftentimes technical support will be provided by people that are no longer in the office. Call center agents may no longer be in the office. They may be at home. So that's one obvious thing. But I think more importantly, from a service standpoint, is that companies are learning, discovering, and innovating, if I can use that term here again, innovating ways to provide remote support to customers. Because during the pandemic, it is not so easy, and sometimes it's just flat out impossible to have a technician be on site at a customer location. So companies like Vertiv have had to come up with ways to provide remote support to customers, and that's exactly what Vertiv is doing. I recall from the podcast today, Greg gave an example where they used to have two technicians on site for safety reasons at some locations. But now, because of the pandemic, they can't have two technicians on site. So they have one technician on site when it's necessary, but they have another technician seeing what that technician is doing using augmented reality, I believe, if I remember correctly, Greg.
Yes.
So I think those trends for trying to find ways to do remote support, and as I mentioned earlier, implementation of these technologies that enable remote support are going to be a trend that just, as the word I used earlier was, I think, explode. So I certainly think it's going to grow. I don't know exactly how fast, but it is definitely going to grow.
Greg, let me ask you.
Mike, maybe if I could interrupt David. Michael, I remember a service council meeting not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it was really interesting. This is what spurred our idea to copy that innovation, if you will. Out at these gas stations that have 30 coffee machines all lined up, you can't drive somebody out to maintain those for the preventive maintenance. And so remotely with a cell phone and a camera, hey, that tube up here in the upper right behind the cover needs to get clean. And so skilled people with good hands are being taught remotely by other people that don't have to go there to do some of the services. And I thought it was a brilliant discussion, and thanks for bringing those guys in.
What a perfect example, if you don't mind. We just did a webinar within the last couple of days with a coffee company in the UK called Costa Coffee, and they have those machines. And obviously, as you said, they can't send technicians to fix them all the time, but they use augmented reality to walk the customer how to do a fix on the machine. Great. So great example. Thank you.
Love that. Love that, making clients more self-sufficient. Greg, is that an example that you see will continue? And are there others that you believe will stay with us? If you can build on Michael's comment in the post-pandemic world?
Yes. And through the development process, the same systems we piloted out for our services organization the same hardware and some of the same software is making its way back into engineering and into our factories. So rather than islanding data and different systems, disparate ways of using things, the same hardware used in our factories, in our testing, and in our deployment and service is being used throughout, so those systems can be shared. We're not quite there yet, but maybe an engineer out servicing one of our UPSs will have online access to the CAD engineering drawings of the day. We have them for the past, right? But of the day, that could be very important in the future.
We've got a question from Greg. With the long life of your technology, do you typically find it necessary to have to perform break fixes or repairs?
Yes. Yes. So most of
was there an inside joke that I missed there somewhere?
Well, most of the big failures that you read about in the newspaper, they're either networking or virus or something that's infrastructure. Some of that stuff by design in the old days, you cannot service live. And you just have to say, okay, we're going to have to turn this off in order to maintain it. Modern systems that have redundancy, the serviceability is designed in. And indeed, we should be honest with ourselves. Everything wears out, everything fails. And as I said before, IoT helps us keep those systems in the sweet spot for as long as possible. But sooner or later, I mean, the steel doesn't wear out, but the capacitors may, and the batteries may, and the moving parts, the fans and the compressors and the valves and the human interaction of the switches and the displays. And so all of those eventually are going to fail. Our world is, and my world in particular, is finding how those things fail, their profile, and anticipating it. We do proactive maintenance all the time. We do not want to wait for failure. Indeed, we have this thing, I say it a lot, I probably shouldn't say it so much, sooner or later the smoke's going to come out, and we want to catch it beforehand, right? But occasionally there are failures, of course.
Let's talk about cyber. I'm having a lot of conversations with clients who they feel blessed, given, beyond the pandemic's obviously global impact on lives and livelihoods. They feel blessed that as knowledge workers, we've had internet access for the last year, and we've been able to still get some things done virtually. Their biggest fear is, God forbid, the next global disruption is cyber. And if it shuts down our ability to connect and engage, and we're going to be in a bigger trouble than we have been in the past year. You brought up cyber as one of your concerns as well. Talk about that. Talk about where do you see cybersecurity, cyber really getting integrated into the products going. And then I want to ask Michael to kind of help build on that as well.
I think I'll use cars again as an analogy. I think what's happened in automobiles is fantastic. There's integration between the engine and the transmission and the person that's driving the car. However, if the communications bus fails or there's a fault, the transmission goes into safe mode. Likewise, the engines can go into safe mode and help the person get to some help or get to some repair. It's almost the same with cyber. I see is that these systems, they have their core functionality. In the example of a UPS, its job is to take energy and be there on standby just in case the utility drops or something happens, a spike occurs. But to be the middleman between the servers and the networking and the rest of the infrastructure. So from a security standpoint, designing in that cannot be turned off, that it cannot go into unsafe modes, that it cannot be pushed around, at the design level allows inherent security to be built into the systems. Lots of companies, and our approach is independent of that. Core operation, kind of like the transmission. There's an external piece that does the communications. External to that is a secure protocol. External to that is some cloud security. And so these multiple tiers of security stack up. Is it impossible to crack? Only the DoD and the military can claim that. Is it so difficult it's not worthwhile? We hope so.
And it sounds like you're trying to deter. And I've also heard security clients say, we have to be on all the time. They have to be right once, right, just to get in and get access. Michael, talk about the role of cyber and security in field service, in customer service.
Well, I can. I'm not sure that I can add a tremendous amount to what Greg has already said. Obviously, organizations that are providing solutions to field service organizations to help them run their business need to be very cognizant about building security, adequate security into the applications that they're providing. But it also falls upon the company that is implementing the solution to make sure that their infrastructure is structured such that cybersecurity is well managed. I can think of a couple of examples that I'm familiar with recently, where two companies were attacked had a malware attack that took their service operations solutions down, and they had to revert back to a manual system for as long as a month to recover from the cyber attack. So I think that diligence falls upon both the providers of the solution as well as upon those that are implementing the solution.
Yeah.
Greg, one of the challenges with cyber and even broadly with service and innovation is one of talent. I've spoken with several clients lately that are really concerned about the brain drain, right? So, solid field technicians and very competent service managers and leaders retiring, and not enough of a farm system to bring in that next generation of talent to be the apprentices, to be that kind of fill in that talent gap. Do you believe attracting, developing, retaining talent has gotten more difficult through this pandemic? And where are you finding exceptional talent for kind of innovation roles at Vertiv?
Yeah. I think if I was to ask our recruiting folks, they would say the job is getting tougher every day. But as the other side of that, as I watch it, the internet, while it's all it's important, it's gotten really important lately. And I was thinking about discussion with one of our recruiters not too long ago. And who's Vertiv? Why would I want to work for you rather than Tesla, for example? Or some other big business that is always in the news being innovative and cool stuff. It's like, hey, we're pretty cool ourselves. We've got some stuff going on and we are really important to our customers. Wouldn't you like to, come and participate in what's keeping the whole world running right now? So back to your COVID discussion previously, I think it puts us in a special place. Is a lot more people are going, yeah, I really need my Zoom to work. I really need, my Microsoft Teams to work. I really need to have access to my files reliably because I'm doing it all day. I think the company that helps support that, like Vertiv, it's that part of it seems easier to me. I'm sure our recruiters, we're fighting with everybody else that are also in this business. So I would say their job's probably getting tougher, but it is changing the dynamics and the expectations. That's probably the big thing.
Do I have to be in Columbus, Ohio to work for your innovation team?
Yeah, I think we talked about that. Our team, I was thinking back when Michael was talking about COVID, we are already remote. I remember about a year ago saying, hey, just go over there and steal all the monitors and take them home. We were
legally and ethically, by the way.
Yes, of course.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Borrow the monitors.
Borrow them. Yeah, that would be better. Yeah.
And so we are a remote team anyway with Follow the Sun IoT. So we have teams in Europe and in Asia, and we just continued that. And I think in one regard, it's gotten us a little bit mature in that we can be together for some time of the day. But I think we're a lot more mature in that we can work asynchronously now. So I make a request or a note. And myself, I've grown up a little bit. It's like, hey, rather than call somebody, email them, make them react now, is like kind of gather your thoughts together and put the request in. They can work on it the next day or the next time zone. Makes us much more productive, I feel.
Yeah, very smart. Michael, I've got a client that's in the elevator and escalator business, and they can't find enough sharp young people to bring in as apprentices. What are you guys seeing at Service Council around this whole service talent space?
Well, it's not surprising that you make that comment at all, because one of the things that's come out of the Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey that I referred to earlier is that a significant percentage of technicians are changing jobs frequently. In fact, more than 70% of technicians under the age from 25 to 34 change jobs within 3 years. A full 60% of those in between 25 and 44 say that they either will not or they're not sure that they want to stay in field service as a career. So combined with that attitude about I'm not sure I want to be a field service engineer, and the high turnover rate that we're seeing among really the prime age group, and then the older people retiring, that does really portend as a potential problem for organizations that are trying to hire. So I don't know what the solution is yet, but we do know what the pending problem is. And it's something that service management absolutely needs to pay attention to and start developing some plans to engender a sense of loyalty among their employees so they don't feel like they have to move on, like Vertiv is trying to do, and to recruit new, fresh talent to replace that talent that's leaving. One of the best comments that we've heard, and then I'll shut up, from one of our members was that they don't hire for skills, they hire for will, and then they teach the skills. They want people that are going to be advocates for the customer, and then they teach them what they need to know in order to take care of the equipment that the customer may have. Great
point. Greg, where's the role of academia and lower ed or higher ed in this whole talent kind of funnel approach?
Yeah. One of my roles in the business is, as I said, is to go find relevant technology, applied research from universities, the U part, and to bring those in. Well, along the way, I'm rubbing shoulders with fresh young minds with new ideas, and they become aware of the interesting work that we're doing. And so that helps in the long term. Indeed, there are aspects of the hands-on work that's happening in these universities, and people start to enjoy that. While they might be trained and thought they were very interested in engineering, fair number of those people end up being operational or guiding services or leading part of our services organization. So academia, and I would encourage anybody on this call, get involved, get your companies involved. Those are yet another source for young minds that can help us in this world.
For our audience, if you've joined us late, you're listening to Greg Ratcliff, is Chief Innovation Officer at Vertiv, and Michael Israel is the Chief Operating Officer at Service Council. Guys, I want to build on that whole talent agenda for a second with Michael, and again, please correct me if my perception is wrong, but service seems to also be very male-dominated. In this current society where we're talking a lot about diversity and equity and inclusion, what are you seeing? Were there any information in your survey that talked about diversity? And I'm really interested in beyond, how do you say this politely, lip service, beyond corporate mantras that we believe in diversity and inclusion. I'm interested in your perspective and Greg's, and what can we do? What can each of us do as leaders to identify, to nurture, to really bolster true diversity in not just ethnic and gender, but cognitive, and really bolster the success of the less represented kind of minority groups?
Well, I think you're right that traditionally field service has been a male-dominated group. When I first started many, many years ago, there were, I managed field service organizations. I think we had one woman in one of the organizations I had, and there were well over 100 technicians. So it has traditionally been an issue. However, I do solidly believe that it is changing. Virtually every conversation that we have with service executives, the topic of diversity comes up. And they are all saying, and I think it's not just lip service, they are all committed to developing much more diverse service organizations, much more diversity among the service staff. So I've noticed recently that there are more and more women in service organizations. More and more women are interested in developing these kinds of technical skills. Frankly, in many instances, I believe this in a lot of ways, women are smarter than men. So it would be to the hiring manager's advantage in many instances to really encourage diversity among those that are also hiring for the rest of the company. And I think corporations in general are becoming much more sensitive to diversity and encouraging their management staff to expand not just women, but also other ethnic groups as well. But certainly within field service, we are absolutely seeing it.
Before I go to Greg, I wish you would stop talking to Mrs. Knorr about women are smarter than men. I'm just putting it out there. It's not helping me, right? So
we shared coffee this morning via Zoom.
I'm not surprised. Greg, talk about diversity and within Vertiv, within the innovation team, and what do you believe we can all do as leaders?
Yeah, I love that you said lip service. There's a lot of literature and research that in my world of innovation and changing things is that the very best ideas come from a diverse group. So that's well known and established, and companies like ours have realized this some time ago. But what do you do about it? And so there's this desire to have multiple geographies, in our stakeholder calls, and problems to get other voices and other opinions and other views. But not only that the solutions are better, it's that the solutions come quicker. And so there is an immediate payoff to having different points of view, different perspectives, different backgrounds professionally to come to bear on a problem. One of the ways that we are doing this is you want to get involved early in STEM, of course, and a lot of companies are doing that. Personally, I would encourage you guys to investigate MentorNet. It's a way to give back personally. It's one-on-one, helping somebody that's struggling in their first years of school. Not for the grad students, not for the PhDs. This is for freshmen that are just trying to make it, because those are the formidable years at university and any kind of training. So there's organizations out there that individually we should do our part. And I think that helps early on. The STEM movement and the STEM lobby, I think, is fantastic because we see the benefits for this. We absolutely see the benefits. We have to start pushing them down into our world a little bit earlier in the life experiences of these folks.
Absolutely. We've got a great question from Mark. Greg, does Vertiv handle the field engineers, logistics, and the rest of the service process in-house, or do you lean on more of a outsourcing model to meet SLAs?
Yeah, that's
good question.
The answer is everything. In some geographies, it's more prudent to have outsourced folks that already have the relationships. In some customer profiles, it's more prudent. Think security clearances, access. Some of those are customers in those spaces. There is a certain requirement for people to come in and do service. We are. I hesitate to just say service in the context of repair, because a piece of services is operation, and so experts are required. And in some cases, modeling and thermographs, and some of those are best handled by other experts. Who leads that effort, of course, is managed centrally, and it needs to be to coordinate all the activities. If you don't, you risk having a piece of activity in one part of the data center that is unknown in another part, and now the customer or the site is at risk.
We were talking about.
Yeah, let me just comment on that quickly, Nor. That is also a trend that we're seeing, a hybrid hybrid workforce, and it makes a lot of sense. In fact, we wrote a report about it very recently as well, and we're encouraging organizations to consider using a hybrid workforce if they are not already doing so.
Michael, is there a downside to it?
I think managed well, no. There's a potential downside, of course, that you could use people that don't have the necessary skill set. You could use people that don't feel a sense of loyalty because they're not your employee, and so they may have a tendency to, not be as responsive as you want. But if you vet the third party person or the third party organization thoroughly, then you should be able to avoid those problems.
Got it. So John Carroll's got a great point that, nearly 40% of the respondents from this Voice of the Field Service Engineer survey indicated that they disagree with the notion that their feedback is actually leveraged for improvement. Greg, I'm reminded of the old suggestion boxes that were on back of the break rooms.
That's
and
right.
You never knew where those folded pieces of, if you took the time to write it out and put it in the box, you never knew what Neverland those things went into. Talk about where does field service technician input go? Where does people that within the innovation team, their input, where does that go?
That's I don't know. You must have been reading my mind or spying on my machine. Speaking of cyber, we just put together at the Vertiv Innovation Summit, where we had all the leaders and innovators, patent creators, anybody that put in a disclosure, basically the folks that added content to that suggestion box. We got them together globally and the first thing was, we asked this question some time back: how can we change our culture of innovation and make sure these voices are heard? And one of the biggest thing was, we need a chief innovation officer who's going to be measured on this. So that was a great outcome from our first meeting some months ago.
Job
security. Yeah, sorry. But I will say that, electronics and systems allow us to curate these in a much better way than in the past. The system that we've chosen to implement allows ideas to be grown in a crowdsourcing manner. Crowdsourcing innovations has been around for a long time, but they have not been around that much in corporate America, or in the corporations generally worldwide. And these systems allow upvotes like we see on Facebook and other social things. And by getting a little impetus, a little steam, a little motivation behind an idea, it can be nurtured beforehand. The other side of that coin is, I call them antibodies. The antibodies can kick in and kill an idea right before it comes up. And so you need to have almost a representative of the ideas to carry them forward. And that's what an innovation group does is, hey, this looks like a very interesting idea. My role in the business as technology scout is other folks might not say the business is ready for it, but I think we should get ready for this idea, this technology, this change.
Michael, both you and Greg have had distinguished careers and you've done some great things over the years. My next couple of questions of both of you is a little more personal on your own journey. Michael, is there a piece of advice or coaching or mentoring that you received, and Greg, you might be want to think about the same question in a second, that Michael, you believe has had a profound impact on shaping you as a leader? Not just accomplishing more or achieving some short-term results, but really shaping the manager or the leader or the human being you've become.
Yeah, I think so. It might seem kind of a silly example in a way, but I worked for a fellow at IBM many, many years ago. His name was George. He was the best boss I ever had. I had to do I was working in the Pacific Northwest regional office, and I was responsible for managing manpower planning and budgeting for the Pacific North region for field engineering. And I used to have to do a lot of writing for him. And he would look at my writing and he'd throw it back across the desk at me and say, "You can do better than this." And then, he made me do better. at the stuff that I was writing. Usually it was financial summaries or whatever. And that has always stuck with me. He was mean in a way. I mean, it seemed to be mean, but he really wasn't. He was saying, he was saying in a subtle way, I'm pushing you to be the best that you can be. And you know what? I'm a damn good writer today.
You mean you didn't go to him and say, I don't feel safe in this space because
no. And I mean, sorry for seeming to brag, but frankly, I think I'm a pretty good writer when I write reports, and it's due to the fact that he pushed me to do better.
I love it. By the way, your CEO has a strenuous objection to that "best boss ever" comment. So,
oh well, tell him to get over it.
Greg, I'm going to ask you the same question. Coaching or advice or something that someone maybe said or really guided your journey that really had a profound impact on you.
Say, Michael, I might have worked for the same guy. So
I
had one of those also. I think being able to express your thoughts clearly, both in a context like this and in the written word, is really important, because after this is gone, we're going to forget about this, but the written words are going to persist. In my case, I think, as you were asking, David, I was thinking probably it's bifurcated. There's two different pieces of advice. One, work under somebody different than where you work now. As fortune would have, as I've been blessed, I guess I should say, I was in a small business. We spent almost a decade of being poor, and running the checks to the bank as soon as they came in. And so we understood the importance of the economic elements of running a business. Sometimes that gets lost in the big cog of a large organization, but having it ground in early is probably good. Also surrounded by folks and those experiences that come along with mentoring, I think are so important. Like Michael was saying, you had this guy, he's willing to spend a little time on you. And maybe it's writing, maybe it's electronics. In my case, it was, there was a business leader, there was an organizational master, there was a guy that was MIT trained, so I had somebody from out of the best working for me and working with me. And so I think both being willing to expose yourself to new experiences outside of your comfort zone and having leaders that are patient to mentor you, man, I've had it. I've been really blessed, at least in my case. And I think you can seek that out.
You can't go wrong with that wisdom. For our audience, if you joined us late, you've been listening to Greg Ratcliff, Chief Innovation Officer at Vertiv, and Michael Israels, Chief Operating Officer at Service Council. Guys, thanks for being our guest on this live stream.
Thank you. It was a blast.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Greg.
Yep.
Thank you, Norris. Bye.